In this video, we'll be taking a look at some of the functionalities offered by the Lynx Scheduler program. Lynx Scheduler is a software that lets us define and execute test sequences easily without having any prior programming knowledge. This is the main screen where we'll be working most of the time. In the center of the main screen, we can see our test sequence. A test sequence is structured in 3 different levels. The first level we find are test groups. Inside each test group, we can have one or more test cases which make up the second level. Finally, inside every test case, we will find one or more test steps. Test steps are the instructions that will be executed when we run the test sequence. To control the execution of our test sequence, we have at our disposal a series of buttons in the top left corner of the screen. The first button allows us to choose whether the test sequence will be executed in manual mode or automatic mode. The second button lets us run the test sequence. The third button is used to stop the test sequence when it's running. In manual mode, the test sequence will run just once, and we will have to manually execute it again by clicking on the execution button. In automatic mode, when the execution of the test sequence reaches the end, a new test will start automatically and will continue to execute until we decide to stop the sequence by clicking on the stop button. If we take a look to the left of these buttons, we will find 3 fields where we can see the name of the product that we're testing, its serial number, and the batch that it belongs to. The serial number can be introduced manually with the keyboard using a barcode scanner, or it can be configured to auto-increment. The serial number will be useful when looking through the reports that are generated by Lynx Scheduler, where we can see the result of all of the executed tests. In the lower left corner of the screen, we have some counters that tell us the number of tests that have been executed up until now. Starting from the top, we can see the number of tests that have been executed in automatic mode, the total number of tests that have been executed, the number of tests that have been OK, and finally the number of tests that have been not OK. If we look towards the right, the first thing we will find is the file name and the path of the test sequence that is loaded. Then the total time that the test sequence has been running in automatic mode, and the test time of the current execution. Finally, if we look underneath of the total test time, we'll find the result of the test sequence. While the test is running, we will see a blue progress image here. Once the test has finished, we will see either a red or green message indicating the result of the test. To be able to edit our test sequence, the first thing we have to do is enable the edition mode. To do this, we must type in the edition mode password and click on the button labeled Unlock Edit. Lynx Scheduler lets us connect to any device so that we may use it in our test sequence. This can be done by going to the Devices menu that we can find in the top left corner of the screen. In the Devices window that pops up, there are 3 different areas. The first one is a list of all of the device controllers that we have installed. The second one, with a light blue background, is a list of all of the devices that we have configured to be used in the current test sequence. Finally, in the bottom area, we will be able to edit the configuration parameters of the devices that we have included in the blue list to be used in our test. If, for example, we want to configure a multimeter to be used in our test sequence, first we will select it from our list of all the available devices, and we will use the right arrow button to include it in our test. Then we would have to select the device that we have just added to the test devices list and fill in its configuration parameters. We can then close the devices window and the multimeter would be ready to be used in our test sequence. To actually use the device in our test sequence, we have to include it in a new test step or in an already existing test step. When we select the test step, a properties column will appear on the right side of the screen. The main properties for any step are the description, device, and function. For this example, we're going to choose the multimeter that we have just configured from the device properties drop-down list. After selecting a device, the functions drop-down list will be updated and we'll be able to choose from the available functions that this device offers. We'll continue this example by measuring a voltage. Once we have both the device and the function selected, New fields will appear underneath where we can specify the value of the parameters that the selected function needs. Here we can see that the measure voltage function takes in 4 parameters: the minimum accepted value, the maximum accepted value, a calibration value, and a value to choose the multimeter's measuring range. We can fill in these parameters using fixed values, or we can also use variables. When we click on one of the fields, an arrow will appear that we can click on to open a drop-down. This drop-down list contains some of the internal variables of the program, as well as whatever variables we may have defined. Variables are a handy tool that let us do operations with previous steps' values, define different values for each variant, and manipulate data by defining expressions. We'll take a more in-depth look at variables and how they work in future videos. For the current example, we're going to use fixed values in the parameters. In this case, we want to measure a voltage of 0.8 volts with a tolerance of 10%. That's all we need to do to configure the test step. Let's save our test sequence so that we can load it again the next time we open the program. Finally, the only thing left to do is running the test sequence and making sure everything works correctly. Another tool that Lynx Scheduler puts at our disposal is the creation of graphic panels. Graphic panels help us identify at first glance which one of our dupes has a problem and where. Just like with variables, we will be taking a closer look at graphic panels in future videos. We can also check the results of our test by opening the report file that was generated. Here, we will find the result of all of the executed instructions. This was a small introduction to the Lynx Scheduler software. We will continue exploring in more depth all of the functionality and traits that Lynx Scheduler has to offer in future videos. Remember to subscribe to our channel and visit our website for more information. See you soon.